Well, if you recall, yesterday we spent a bit of time talking about time, and in fact, we've done that for the last couple of days. And I spoke a lot about the idea of utilizing time in a most productive way. And again, I want to iterate that I don't think there's anything wrong with relaxation. I love being able to sit on a hot beach and soak up the sun. 85 degrees is my sweet spot. And the older I get, I think the temperature keeps on going up. But, I have nothing against that. I love sitting in the ocean. I find the waves refresh my mind and clear away a lot of crazy stuff. But to remember that fun and relaxation are meant to be things that refresh us and enable us to stay in the ministry. And you are in the ministry, even though you may not get paid for it or have a title. You are in the ministry. You're a servant of God, and He wants to use you in the lives of other people in one way or another. But you need those refreshments. You need those relaxations. You need to have fun. You need to laugh, because those are the things that really kind of lift a lot of heavy things from our lives. But the whole point is, if we want to make our life all about laughter and having fun and enjoyment and pleasure, that gets old really quick. And suddenly having fun no longer becomes play. It becomes work. I once came to the conclusion that the difference between work and play is simply this. Play is work that you can quit when you get tired of doing it. Work is play that you can't quit until it's finished. And the fact that we don't realize those things, the difference between those two, means that a lot of people, especially younger people, are being told that the purpose of work is to play. And that's why you have federal workers who want to stay home and work from home and are crying on CNN with their faces blacked out and a baseball cap on so you can't recognize who they are, and they're crying because they have to go back into the office. I sit there and look at that and go, how infantilized have we become as people in this country? Well, it's really sad, because I felt very sad for that man, because he does not understand the pleasure that comes from doing a job well. Doing something well, sitting back and saying, I put my best into it, I did the best I could, and I feel good about it. And that's the whole point, is that God wants us to have that feeling in a lot of areas of our life, but primarily He wants me to sit back and say, I fought the good fight of faith, as Paul said. I finished my course, and I'm ready to be delivered. I'm ready to go get out of here. But he could look at his life and say, Paul did a lot of things. He was a tent maker. He often supported himself in ministry by making tents, which was a primary occupation, particularly for the Roman military. And he found himself doing all sorts of things with his hands, that he didn't just sit around and think deep thoughts. But the whole point was that even when Paul was doing the ministry, he worked hard at it, invested himself in it, because everything he did, he had with the perspective of eternity. He had already come to see a glimpse of eternity when he got saved, and he knew that that's where he was going, and so he lived every day seeking to come to that moment. And that's why in verse 10, one of the things he reminds us again is the day of the Lord will come. The scoffers may say, oh, you're living for pie in the sky. We realize pie is the least of it. It's going to be the full banquet celebration of everything wonderful beyond anything I could know. And it will come, even though sometimes I think it comes too quickly or it doesn't come quickly enough. In fact, he said it'll come like a thief. In other words, not because you observe it, not because you're aware of it's coming, but it will happen in a moment, instantaneously. And that's the simple reality, is that whether we die from natural causes, whatever that means, or, basically your body gives out, or we die because we are raptured, which I think also means that the body needs to be done away with. It needs to die so I can get a new body. That's probably one of my thoughts. But the point is that it's going to happen. It's going to happen so quickly. And he says it's going to be, the heavens are going to disappear with a roar. I was listening to someone talking about the recent plane crash at Reagan National Airport, and they said that death was so instantaneous to the people on that JC6, American Airlines flight. The deaths of them, those 67 people, was so quick. He said they don't even know now they're dead. And I thought to myself, well, the believers and unbelievers both know they're dead, and they also know where they're at. They're either with the Lord or they're not. But it's just like that. He said when it'll become with a roar, he means that there is just this paralyzing moment. I remember being on a flight taking out of New Delhi, India, back in the 80s, and there had just been a bombing of an Air India plane, and I'm on a TWA flight. You may not remember them, but they were a carrier in the day. And we're taking off this 747, we're ascending, and suddenly there's this loud explosion, a flash of yellow light, and the first thought in my life, unemotional, but the very first thought was, it's a bomb and we're dead. And it was kind of like, there was no emotion, no feeling associated with it. I just thought, okay, this is it. And that's the way it is. It happens so quickly that the mind can't even absorb what's going to happen. It's not like you can sit back and say, I see him coming and I'm going to make the decision that I'm going to start following Christ. You can't. It's instantaneous, and it comes in a way that you won't see it, especially if you're not watching and waiting and ready, which most people are not. But he said all of these elements will be destroyed by fire. So everything that you look at and you say, well, it has value. This watch I have, this ring I wear, the microphone over here, the computer, my car, my 1603 copy of the Geneva Bible, leather-bound Geneva Bible. Some of these things I cling to, they're going to be gone. Nothing that I think has value is going to exist. It's all going to become like cryptocurrency, It's money in your head, but I don't know where it's at. But anyway, the whole point is that he said the elements will be destroyed and the earth and everything done in it. Now, this is the part I think was really interesting, that everything that is done in the earth will be laid bare. In other words, everything will be exposed for what it is. So when we live in an era of utter, complete, insane nonsense, when we have people seriously claiming that men can become women or women can become men and all that sort of stuff, or any of the 72 gender varieties that they have come up with. We all know basically that's sick and wrong and ridiculous, and if they lie to you about that, they're probably trying to lie to you about a whole lot of other things. But the whole point is that there will be no deception. There will be no persuasion. You won't be able to convince God or anybody else or anything else that things are other than what they are. And there's only one central question that matters. Are you Jesus's or are you the devil's? Do you know God or you don't know him? Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell? That's what kind of irritates me. That is a little commercial, and I think, I don't know who it is. I'm sure they mean well, but they say, are you going to heaven or not? And I thought, here again, we're avoiding the ugly four-letter word, hell. But that's really the central issue. Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell? There is no not out there. There's no limbo in between. There's no purgatory. There's no nirvana. There's nothing else. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. And in that moment, that's not going to be even open for discussion. In fact, that's a wonderful thing about, it says, when I get to heaven, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13, that I will be known even now as I am known. And this is the thing that Proverbs, Solomon said, that every work of man, everything that we do, every action is bare and open and known by God. There's no secrets. When we keep a secret, the only one we're kidding is ourselves. God knows the absolute complete truth about everything in our life. And the only thing that we can do to relieve the fear of that is to openly confess it. God, you know me. You know my sins. Forgive me. And he does if we ask. But that's the whole point. Too many times, even as Christians, we're trying to convince ourselves and everybody else, and even thinking that if we can get other people to believe things that aren't true about us, that somehow that's good with God. If I can pretend to be better than I am, then somehow, and other people believe that I'm better than I am, then somehow God is going to go along with that. And the whole point is, he says, everything is going to be laid bare. There are going to be no secrets. Now, the wonderful thing is, there are things that I'm never going to have to deal with. God has forgiven me. And the older I get, the more I tend to remember some of the things I've done and said over the years, especially before I was saved. I mean, it's very painful to me to think about some of those things. But I tell you, it's to know that as far as the east is from the west, as the psalmist said, he's removed those things from my life. And I don't have to live trying to resolve that. They're unresolvable. Some of my, I hate to put it this way, but some of my victims are no longer with us. And I contributed in small ways to that in many cases. And I look back on that and think how I wish I could have shared Christ with him if I had known Christ. But my whole point is that we are people who we lay bare now, as Paul said to the Corinthians, we judge ourselves now that we don't become judged with the world. And so all of that I want to be removed so that when I stand before his presence, I will be transparent in his presence and without spot or blemish, and he will see nothing in me but the reflection of his own nature, his own person. And how terrifying it's going to be for those people who have just the opposite, where they're just completely exposed and nothing will be hidden. Blessings.